I think we should start, just mindful of everybody's time, Representative, and hello to this wonderful group assembled.
This is a really incredible group of colleagues and friends from across the Commonwealth. Thank you for joining Senator Comerford and I for the launch of SD 2839 and HD 4669. This is an act creating a state disaster relief fund for emergency management. I'm proud to have filed this with Senator Comerford. And again, thank you to all of our House and Senate colleagues and partners in municipal government from across the Commonwealth who are here with us today to tell your stories about the need for this important piece of legislation. If we could go to the next slide, please.
I am trying to go to the next slide.
Well, it's okay. But while you're managing that, I can say that, before we get started, I think it is important to recognize the emergency management directors in all of our towns and cities that work so hard on preparing our communities for disasters, for these emergencies. We also want to recognize, express our gratitude really to the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency for their tireless efforts on so many issues facing the Commonwealth right now. I want to just recognize that the idea for this legislation really stemmed from conversations that we had with the agency over the last several years. And finally, I just want to make sure that we recognize the commitment from Speaker Mariano and Senate President Spilka and the legislature as a whole to provide disaster relief funds in response to the storm events that we saw this summer, to have $20 million be directed towards farmers for the disasters that they experienced. But also the House closeout supplemental that we passed last week included $12 million for a statewide natural disaster relief fund. And I believe that the bill that the Senate is taking up today, Jo, chime in here on your efforts.
Yep, absolutely. It will also include money. The number currently is 15 million. So we'll find a way forward together as partners like we always do.
So next slide, please. As we learned in the recent July and August storms, as we've learned from tornadoes, from massive fires, and even gas explosions in the Commonwealth, we know that the best time to prepare for a disaster is before one strikes. Next slide, please. So according to the National Association of State Budget Officers, or NASBO, as they're well known as, and the Pew Charitable Trust, believe it or not, Massachusetts is one of just a handful of states that does not have a disaster relief fund or a similar mechanism for disaster relief funding. And what we saw in many of our communities across the Commonwealth this summer, they did not meet the federal disaster declarations when those disasters struck. Without those federal disaster declarations, without the president making a federal disaster declaration, those federal funds are not made available to assist our communities. And so with that in mind, that is how we came to introduce this legislation that Jo will delve into.
That's wonderful. And I just want to pile on one notch, which is that the National Association of State Budget Officers, in partnership with Pew Charitable Trust, are really leading a national movement. So what we're doing today in Massachusetts is echoing through many other states as they both look at the current processes that they have in place and how much money they're dedicating to it. And then for those states like Massachusetts, sort of redouble our efforts. And as Rep. Blais said so beautifully, in partnership with the people leading this work. And so we have no end of gratitude to the Healey-Driscoll administration and MEMA for their expertise. And this should be seen, and we're viewing this together as a work of solidarity with the Healey-Driscoll administration and our friends in emergency management. So let's talk about the bill. And then we're really going to get to the main event, which is the speakers who will really talk about how this bill will live on in their communities and the need for the bill. So We'll run you through very quickly. We'll certainly reply to everyone who signed up with a bill summary and a section by section so that you can have this. So basically it creates the first ever emergency disaster relief program. We're suggesting in the bill that it's managed by MEMA because MEMA would be the place where the resources would coalesce as they do in emergencies naturally. And MEMA will set up the eligibility criteria and application procedures. And again, this is in their wheelhouse. They help communities identify disaster-related costs. They help communities now apply for federal disaster relief. And they'll be able to pull all of the related agencies together as needed. We suggest that it should be capitalized with $250 million from capital gains revenue that would be otherwise transferred into the rainy day fund. And as you all know who are joining, it rained in July in the Commonwealth. And so we think it's an appropriate use of this money. And it would be sustained over time through the same revenue stream. That's the proposal. And so we're suggesting here in this bill that it can be distributed for emergency disaster relief by natural or human-caused disasters, right? And that's potentially arson, for example, at a very large scale. That payments can go directly to municipalities, to private nonprofits, to businesses and individuals, and that MEMA would have some discretion about whether to distribute these as reimbursements or grants or matching funds or cost shares. And that will, of course, depend a lot on whether or not these instances receive federal funds and the kinds of disasters that we are facing, right? So we're going to need MEMA's nuance and expertise here. And MEMA, we're suggesting, would submit a report within 6 months to talk about how they propose to roll this out. And this is eligibility, application submissions, approval processes. So everything that is are essentially the guts of the bill in action would come back to the legislature so that we then can help our constituents, along with the Healey-Driscoll administration, understand how it would be enacted. And MEMA will have to, of course, track the funds as they are dispersed because we'll need to have the cycle of reimbursement through capital gains revenue. So I just want to thank Senators Roush, Cronin, Moore, Robin Kennedy, and Ryan Fatman, who all have joined as initial bill co-sponsors. Many, not only Rep. Blais and I, represented communities that were struck by natural disasters this summer. And so, the recognition of our colleagues that this fund and this procedure and this emergency management framework is needed, is embodied in these initial co-sponsors. So now that the bill is launched, we will go out to a wider group of House members and senators to build the kind of support that we're going to need to make the strongest case possible for this legislation. So I'll turn it over to Rep. Blais.
Yeah, I just want to thank, again, we have a lot of colleagues here today, but I want to thank and name these initial bill co-sponsors. We have Rep. Barrett, who I can see from the great West, Rep. Kushmerek, Rep. Wynn, Rep. Pignatelli, Rep. Sabadosa, Rep. Shand, Rep. Duffy, Rep. Montano, Rep. Arena DeRosa, Rep. Linsky, Rep. Scarsdale, Rep. Socolo, Rep. Dahm, Rep. Higgins, Rep. Kastner, Rep. Vargas, Rep. Ramos, Rep. Saunders, Rep. Reyes, Rep. Cairns, and Rep. Vieira, and this list is growing. But this is a tremendous showing of solidarity from our colleagues across in our municipalities. We felt the pain of our municipal leaders as they really struggled to respond to the needs of their communities. So I want to thank all of my House colleagues for joining with us in co-sponsoring this legislation.
Absolutely. And I thank my Senate colleagues, and we also should really thank the leadership in both of our chambers. We've been in good conversation as we've developed this idea, not only with MEMA, of course, and the Healey-Driscoll administration, but with legislative colleagues, all of whom are wrestling with this reality that Massachusetts is one of a very few states that doesn't have a framework in place for responding as a state, not only, as in our relationship to the federal government, but as a state for our people and municipalities.
So with that, we're going to move on to the meat of this program and hear from municipal leaders and residents. When we looked at the storm impacts from July and August, I just want to give some context here for who is here. It was really difficult for Senator Comerford and I to narrow down the speaking program because there were so many communities that were impacted. In the end, we partnered with House and Senate colleagues to invite speakers from the community with the most reported damage in nearly every county across the Commonwealth. So the speakers that you'll see here include mayors, we have select board chairs, and even a homeowner who experienced a great deal of damage. So we have asked them to do the impossible, to speak for just 2 minutes on the extraordinary disasters that you responded to in your communities, how you responded, what the challenges were, and how a fund like this might help. Senator Comerford.
Thank you, Representative. So I have the privilege of introducing our first speaker. This is my mayor. I live in the city of Northampton, and I am represented by really a tireless public servant in Mayor Gina-Louise Sciarra. Madam Mayor, thank you so much for kicking us off today. I'm deeply grateful for the way you led us through what happened in July, and so much else, of course, in your administration.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to provide testimony in support of an act creating a state disaster relief fund for emergency preparedness. And great thanks to Senator Comerford and Representative Blais for filing it. I just can't tell you how grateful I am. As the mayor of Northampton, I have the responsibility to steward the municipality's budget. While we are very proud of the work we've done to create responsible reserve funds, our municipal budget, and I imagine most others, would struggle to handle and do struggle to handle sudden additional expenses in the millions. When weather events or other disasters impact our municipality, we rely on our state and our federal partners for relief funding. But as we've heard, the federal government does not provide disaster relief to municipalities unless the President of the United States makes a disaster relief declaration. Northampton has incurred storm damage many times when the president has not made this declaration, and so federal funds have not been made available to help. Our most recent example is the flooding and the storm damage that we incurred in July when we had rainstorms here in excess of 6 inches per hour, and the Connecticut and the Mill Rivers flooded. We blew multiple culverts. There was a lightning strike that damaged an electrical chemical monitoring device on our 36-inch drinking water main. There are all sorts of events that happened all over the city as we were watching these rivers very carefully. These days were extremely stressful and frankly frightening as we sleeplessly watched our very old and insufficient infrastructure strain to hold. And we are still dealing with the impact of what happened during that time. All told, we have over $1.2 million in damage. Without a special appropriation from the state legislature, there would not be funding available to rebuild from this disaster. And with the climate crisis, we know we are going to experience more frequent and more severe weather events like we did this summer. That's why I'm so grateful that this act has been filed. This bill will help Massachusetts get honest about the kind of natural disaster challenges we're going to face due to climate change, which is already upon us. It will help small cities like Northampton without a sufficient tax base to keep up the necessary infrastructure, repair, and modernization to meet these changing needs around stormwater. We will face the increasing challenge of keeping our people safe and our businesses safe and our communities safe. And this bill is incredibly important to help us with that. So kudos to you all, and great thanks to MEMA for all the work that MEMA does. I think that this is a perfect way to be able for them to lead this needed emergency response work for the Commonwealth. And again, great thanks to Senator Comerford and Rep. Blais for putting this forward. It's crucial for communities like mine. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. We appreciate you so much. Over to you, Rep. Blais.
Thank you. One of the things that I think you'll see from our speakers today is that natural disasters can happen anywhere, whether you're a small community or a large city. And I want to just thank sincerely Rep. Kuchmarek, who connected us with the mayor of Fitchburg, who is here today. Mayor, thank you very, very much for joining us to talk about what happened in Fitchburg.
Thank you, Representative. I too, I'm not going to prolong this. We all know we had certain challenges, 100-year storm issues in the city of Fitchburg. We had culvert damage. Believe me, I've learned more about culverts than I care to have to admit. But that was significant. The damage was in the neighborhood of $4 to $5 million. So we didn't meet that threshold. But for a city like Fitchburg, I was fortunate enough to have the city council agree to have us access our stabilization account, rainy day fund, if you will. And we haven't had to tap into that yet. But that affects so much more of a city's fiscal health when you have to go into that stabilization account and diminish it. Sometimes you're doing that where the Department of Revenue is saying, well, naughty, you can't, you're below what it should be. So that's always a challenge. But again, I want to thank Representative Blais and certainly Senator Comerford. I can't believe that that one of a few states that does not have this provision. But long overdue, obviously. And this will happen again. I hope it doesn't. I mean, my neighboring city of Leominster, much more devastation than we experienced, to the tune. I think they certainly exceeded the federal threshold, which, what is it, folks, 14 million or something? I think it has to reach that at that point, or go beyond, I should say. So again, thank you, Representative and Senator. Thank you so much. This is much needed legislation, and we certainly, I know the mayors that are on this call are certainly all in favor of proceeding and hopefully to a successful passage of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. From Franklin County, as many of you know, we had pretty significant damages in two towns, one in Conway, one in Deerfield. So I'd like to turn it over now to Carolyn Ness, who's the chair of the Deerfield Select Board, and then we will go to Phil Kantor, who is the chair of the Conway Select Board. Carolyn.
Thank you. I am absolutely testifying in support of this bill. Both Natalie and Jo are wonderful to have filed this. Geographically, Deerfield is at the bottom of the bowl at the confluence of the Deerfield, Green, and Connecticut rivers. We've been historically and will be in the future at risk for flooding, despite our best efforts to prepare for and to prevent these events. While the sheer number and the magnitude of these storms have increased, they are not reaching the thresholds necessary for a federal declaration and the federal assistance that follows a declaration. Communities across the Commonwealth are being devastated fiscally and overwhelmed by these gap storm events that are occurring. We have been faced with unprecedented extraordinary storm damage this summer. On July 10th, we experienced over $1 million worth of damage to our roads and infrastructure. On July 21st, we had a reported 9 inches of rain in 53 minutes. To date, we have spent or are committed to almost $4 million in materials and supplies and labor to open our roads. We still have a closed road, single lanes on several, and our biggest concern, River Road, failing, a $2 to $5 million project by itself that we are unsure how to tackle. This bill is extremely important to all communities' fiscal well-being. Some years money is included in the supplemental bill, like this year, hopefully, for our damages. But some years, and some years we are reimbursed for our, close to what our losses are. But some years only a fraction, and some years not so good, not so lucky, nothing. We need consistent, reliable, and reasonably prompt fiscal help when these storms occur and the full impact of climate change keeps occurring for us. please report this bill out favorably to everybody and his brother, because this is really needful. Thank you.
Hope you're just on mute, Nat.
Sorry. I was just thanking Carolyn for her thoughtful sharing her story for Deerfield. Phil Kantor, turning it over to Conway now.
Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for filing this this bill very much. As many of you might know, Conway beat all competitors in the month of July to be named by the National Weather Service as the rainiest community in North America, including the July 21st storm, which featured 8 inches of rain in 20 minutes. We sustained just damage to town culverts and town roads, $3.9 million. Our annual non-school related budget is $2.8 million. We trying to, spending money in deficit to fix our roads and culverts is tightrope walking without without a safety net, and it's terrifying. And we sorely need this bill. We're very enthusiastically in favor of it. A town like us that has 64 miles of road, most of which are unimproved, is never going to meet any MEMA qualifications, because we are 100% well, 100% septic. We have no industry. We have very few businesses. Our town was wrecked. Every single mile of our roads was damaged. 28 miles were functionally destroyed. It's $3.9 million is the top of our damage scale. It's everything. Without something like this, we're never going to be made whole in any, or even partially compensated for any type of disaster. And I'm sitting here in my home with a hat and several jackets, because I'm one of many people in my town that had their heating system destroyed, electric panels destroyed twice, once after July 10th, once after July 21st. There is just, we really need this bill. The people in my town really need something like this. And when you look and you see that states like Arkansas and Alabama have something like this, and we don't, that's not good. We really need this. To those of you that are on this call that have the ability to make this happen, I can't tell you enough how much we really need this. And so thank you for making this happen. Thank you for at least trying. Hopefully it'll get reported favorably. And and towns like us, the rural towns that don't have the infrastructure, that don't have the ability to make themselves whole, we'll have a place to go to. And because whether people don't realize that even if FEMA, unimproved roads, reimbursement for unimproved roads are not viewed favorably by FEMA. You have a real hard time showing what your history is for how much it costs. And those are the type of things that FEMA really wants to know. So
thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Phil. We appreciate you being here today. And I'm glad that you tied in the municipal damage. We've also seen individual homeowners who experienced a great deal of damage that insurance didn't cover. And individual assistance is even harder to come by from the federal government. So that is one of the strengths of this bill, is that it would provide individual assistance. It could provide individual assistance as well. And I want to recognize, at the invitation of Representative Andy Vargas, who is here today, there is tremendous damage in Haverhill. And today we have with us a Haverhill resident, Megan Bowen. And Megan, if I could just turn it over to you for a couple of minutes to talk about your story and what happened.
Sure. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you so much for bringing this bill forward. So in Haverhill, we suffered the massive rainfall on August 8th. And that rainfall caused infrastructure failure. So just like Philip was saying, like all the infrastructure, the city roads, our culvert failed that runs alongside our house, and it flooded the street. The catch basins weren't working, and that all poured into our yard and our basement, causing a 6-foot sinkhole alongside our house. Everything from that sinkhole now covers our entire backyard and up to a foot of debris and damage. And it's still there. This was August 8th. We've gotten no support. We have no financial assistance. Homeowners insurance doesn't cover this at all. And then the MEMA relief, even if we did receive that in Haverhill, we would have had to have 18 inches of water above our first floor in order to receive any sort of assistance financially, which is just like, that's like, for the situation doesn't even compute. We lost our hot water heater, our furnace, our fridge freezer, and lots of personal items as well. We ended up with a total of around $70,000 worth of damage and losses, and none of that has been reimbursed in any capacity. The most we got offered was low interest loans, and that's like not really doable as like a resident and just, you know, a school teacher. That's like not the best option for us. So that, like, we've been sitting here, the hole sits there, it's taped off, and we still haven't even heard anything from the city insurer. So we've like filed with the city, and there's been no assistance, no, the communication's been really rough, and this is something that we like can't fund out of our pockets. I'm a first-time home buyer. I've lived in Haverhill for now 2 years, and this is the third time it's happened. So it happened in November 2021. We had our whole stairs wash out, and we said, you know, 50-year storm, act of God, fine. We rebuilt it ourselves by hand, and then it happened August 8th. And then a week later, on August 18th, it happened again. So we had about 10 inches of water in our basement. It pours in over our electrical panel. So it's only a matter of time before our electrical panel goes as well. And this isn't something that comes in from the ground. It comes in from the top foundational level, and water falls into the basement. So having this bill support citizens is so crucial, because right now there is no support for citizens, and MEMA doesn't cover it. Like there's literally nothing for us in this situation. And this isn't just like act of God, like it's infrastructure on top of it. So it's like the full gambit of issues that we're looking at here. So I really appreciate the time to share my story. I hope that we can really push and get this through, because like I said, I'm sitting here and it's about to be winter, and I still have a six foot sinkhole in no end in sight here. So thank you so much.
Megan, thank you for being here today and sharing your story. It's heartbreaking, but I'm grateful to you for sharing it, and just want to again thank Rep. Vargas, who is here as well, for connecting us and making sure that you could be here today to share the impact of the storms on you as an individual, as a homeowner in Haverhill. Finally, at the invitation of Reps. Ramos and Wynn, we have the North Andover town manager here, Melissa Rodrigues, to talk about what happened in North Andover. Melissa.
I appreciate the time. On August 8th, we declared a local state of emergency in the town of North Andover after the town experienced extreme flooding due to over 6 inches of rain falling within a 6-hour period, with 3.5 inches of that falling between 10 a.m. and noon. The impacts of that rainfall truly reverberated through our community, with residents, businesses, and our own buildings impacted in ways we had never seen before. And for weeks, we had residents without power and who could not return home. Even today, I speak to residents who are still struggling with damage to their foundations and infrastructures. We responded to businesses townwide to find flood waters 5 feet high, forcing our firefighters to break glass and evacuate employees. We saw parking lots flood until you could only see the tops of cars. We watched businesses that had survived the Columbia gas crisis and struggled through the COVID-19 pandemic literally get swept away by level 3 contaminated floods. On August 15th, the town issued a directive to waive permit fees under an emergency order for affected properties. And on the 17th, the Department of Revenue approved our request for emergency deficit spending. The town reported to MEMA $3.4 million in damages to public facilities, including the town, school, and airport buildings. Among those damage estimates are costs for roads that were completely washed away, cemetery damage where historic gravestones sank. And even today, we continue to find new damage, and those costs continue to escalate. We are still going through our insurance claim process, but already know the majority of our claims are not being approved, leaving us to continue to deficit spend. We reported damage to 309 residences with estimates of damages totaling $4.9 million. And 56 businesses were damaged, reporting $21.5 million in damages, many of them small businesses, and still not reopened 3 months later. The total estimated damage to the town from the August floods totals $29.9 million. Despite our regional efforts, a disaster declaration was not declared, leaving residents, businesses, and public entities alone to struggle with the burden of our costs and repairs. A small business administration loan program was administered, and we were thankful for the initiative, but it is not a solution. I urge you to support this bill. The Merrimack Valley has been burned numerous times in the last 5 years and continues to struggle to rebuild. We are still working to repair the roads that were damaged from the Columbia gas disaster. The creation of a disaster relief fund would aid communities in times of need and help with deficit spending during an emergency, which can have lasting effects on a town's financial health. As we go into the next fiscal year, we will have limited choices to bridge the gap that is created by our current deficit spending. It will either affect our reserves and our bond rating, or our ability to raise our budget next year to continue operating at level services. That's not a solution. So thank you, and I appreciate the initiative.
Thank you, Melissa. We really appreciate you sharing the story of North Andover, and also just want to thank you for bringing up the explosion that happened in the Merrimack Valley. As Senator Comerford noted, this fund is designed to be as flexible as we can possibly make it. And we did think about the explosions in the Merrimack Valley as we were pulling this legislation together. And thank you again to Reps Ramos and Wynn for connecting us with the town manager in North Andover. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to our last speaker, Linda Dunleavy, who is the Executive Director of the Franklin Regional Council of Governments, to talk about planning, which is what she does best, and working with municipalities as they respond to these disasters. Linda.
Thanks, Representative Blais, and thanks, Senator Comerford, for filing this bill and recognizing the importance of this bill. The Franklin Regional Council of Governments serves the municipalities of Franklin County. We are the most rural county in Massachusetts. So our work and the work of all of the regional planning agencies across the state includes conducting after-action reports after major disasters to understand what we as a region could have done better. It includes climate resiliency work. I too know more about culverts than I ever expected I would, but really understanding culverts is a way to prevent the greatest risk of flood damage to our infrastructure. We do watershed planning to understand how rivers want to flow and recognizing the unrelenting power of water during a storm event, and really thinking about how can we push that water and make that water do what it wants to do, or let it do what it naturally is supposed to do and plan for that damage. We work with departments of public work to employ best management practices on our dirt and gravel roads to hopefully prevent the repeated damage to dirt and gravel roads that Phil talked about that. All of that work is to reduce the impact and damage from storm events. That said, when you have 8 to 9 inches of rain in less than an hour, It causes damage that cannot be entirely predicted or prevented with good planning and preparation. And so this bill is so critical to help our municipalities after an emergency so they can get back on their feet and begin to really recover emotionally, physically, financially. Thank you so much for filing this bill.
Thank you so much, Linda, for testifying today, for speaking, but also for all you do and all of the RPAs across the Commonwealth and I know you're in partnership with all of them, helping our communities. So friends, that concludes the speakers from across the Commonwealth who have talked about why this bill is crucial, why this moment is crucial for getting this done. We recognize that there are a number of colleagues who are with us now from the legislature, and we wanted to pause for a moment and ask if any of our colleagues wanted to chime in briefly with your own thoughts. No pressure, but we're heartened by the fact that so many of you are here. I see
Senator,
Rep. Saunders. Yeah, Rep. Saunders, please, and then Rep. Barrett. I know that you're big on this issue, but go ahead, Aaron.
Only a few words of gratitude to you and Representative Blais for leading the charge here. All of us across the state understand how important this is, and as a former local municipal official, it is more necessary each and every day. And look forward to continuing to work with you to get this over the finish line.
Thanks, Rep. Saunders, for your leadership on this issue and your support of communities. Rep. Barrett.
Yes, I'll just offer a few brief remarks. Being a mayor for 26 years and then seeing what has happened since that time, and the disasters that came along at that time were usually snowstorms and other problems like this. Climate change has literally changed the playing field for communities. I think the other thing too, that we saw more people get hurt this past summer by the damages, private property owners, businesses that never had the opportunity. They went to their insurance company, and I listened to the story Megan was telling us about what happened in Haverhill. And the insurance company was always quick to say, do you have flood insurance? And who would have flood insurance if you're living 5 miles away from a river or body of water or anything like this? This is a much needed bill, not only from my experience as a mayor, but also these small communities. 6 years ago, when I was first elected, I experienced or was actually in what they were calling bursts at that time, I guess, and they still are, 2 bursts in the town of Adams, less than 500 yards apart, that caused $2.8 million in damage. And they were forced to have to go out and borrow this money, taking away from other needed capital projects in the community. This is a much needed bill. And I think one message that we're sending to all of the municipal officials, that, as well as our colleagues in the legislature, is that we have to do something about it. It has to be done quickly, because I got a feeling there's going to be a lot more coming, and we have to have the means to be able to address it and also to help the people that we represent very much. So kudos to everybody that was involved in making this happen. But those that are on the call now, your work is continues in the sense that it's great that you're here today to tell your stories, but we have to tell it to other people out there so they'll see the need for this. So thank you for everybody that participated today. It was certainly well worth your time and our time.
Thank you, Representative Barrett. Rep. Blais and I join you in being so grateful for everyone who's joined and the municipal leaders who are going to be crucial to power this through, and certainly our colleagues. So this is the last call for our colleagues on the call. If you want to chime in, no pressure from us. Okay. I see Rep. Vargas.
Just real quick, wanted to thank you, Senator Comerford and Rep. Blais, and your thoughtfulness in putting this together. I think a lot of times one of the main questions we get is, great, everyone wants that, but how do we fund it? And I think you guys were very thoughtful about how we go about that in a sustainable way that allows us to answer that question. So I really appreciate your leadership on this and inviting us to be a part of the bill and the process. Obviously, we've got some work to do, and hopefully with your leadership, we can keep pushing this forward.
Thanks, Representative, and for this and all you do. You're a tireless, like all the servants here on the call, but thank you so much for leading and for helping power this forward. Okay. Oh, and I see a great comment from Rep. Kasner. Thank you for this important discussion. Thank you so much for everything. So this is definitely a, for folks who have been at bill launches before, this is not your traditional bill launch because Representative Blais and I don't think this is a traditional bill. This is going to affect every municipality in the Commonwealth, and therefore we need the great partnership like that is demonstrated today by the offices that are present. There are lots of staff on as well, and by the initial co-sponsors, which were many and quick, right? Lightning quick uptake of this bill, and certainly the administration, which has been really quite tireless in its own work, trying to figure out the best way forward. So with this, friends, we are going to open it up. If there are any questions about the bill from members of the media who are on, we're going to give you an opportunity. There's two quick things we want to say. One is, as I said initially, we will send a link to the text. We will send a section by section summary, and we'll send a sort of an executive summary of this. We'll also send links to a pretty terrific piece of research by Pew Charitable Trust, and we thank Pew for being willing to make us smarter about what other states are doing. So we've taken what we think is the best model and made it Massachusetts. But we've learned from all other states thanks to the Pew Charitable Trust, and also we'll certainly send the NASBO piece as well. Slightly older than the Pew, but very critical. And we also just want to make sure that we're all, I believe we share the same belief that, while we respond to natural disasters, we also have to mitigate, and we have to do the work of upending drastic climate change. And so there are many grant funds inside the state, like the Municipal Vulnerability Program, which I know that the legislators on this call are dedicated to, and I know that they do a critical work in our community. So this isn't an either or. We're not thinking dichotomously. We're thinking together. We have to do all of the work of climate justice and responding and mitigating and creating greater resilience, and climate change is upon us. And so we have to do everything we can to help our people through it. So I'll just listen for a second for questions from members of the media. If you don't have any, that's of course fine. We'll send the recording and all the information we promise. Okay. All right, friends. I don't see any or hear any. Rep. Blais, I'm just going to gut check with you. Oh, okay. We have Megan. Oh, great. Anything from folks? Oh, I see something from John. I think you just have to unmute, John.
Thank you. I thought I'd unmuted myself. One of these days, you'd think after 3 years of Zoom press conferences, I would get muted, unmute correct, but thanks for taking the time. Just want to ask you about next steps for this bill, where it heads next and what's up next for it.
Thank you so much. So the House and Senate right now actually are actively going back and forth to admit the bill. Those of you who follow this wonky stuff of bill admittance know that they have docket numbers now. Soon they will have an S and an H, not a Senate docket and House docket, as both branches admit the bill. We will then see it go to a committee. It could go to a number of different committees depending on where the House and the Senate believe it should. It may go separately, it may go together, and then the bill will have a hearing. And that'll be another opportunity for those of us who care about the bill to make a case for it. And of course, there's all kinds of work that happens in the background as we send this to colleagues and engage them on it. After the hearing or hearings, depending on where the bills go, the committees will make a decision. And we hope that decision is favorable and the bill is able to move forward. It could move forward as is, but no bill, I think almost no bill, leaves the committee like the way it came in. That's the good committee process that we have here. So we hope the bill will be reported after the committee studies it and takes testimony.
Senator, do you have an idea of which committee is most likely to receive the bill?
You know, it's a good question. We do have an emergency response joint committee that was people may remember the COVID-19 and emergency preparedness and management. I had the opportunity to sit on that last session as Senate co-chair that was tailored to emergency preparedness and management. And so that committee, you know, could be a natural destination for this. It has two good chairs, and we would be pleased to talk with those chairs. You know, but we'll see. Again, this is not of our deciding at this point. The good thing is that it's being admitted on a pretty quick timeline. So folks know that late file bills can take some time. But I think the fact that both House and Senate have been admitted and they're in the pipeline this quickly with this many co-sponsors is a hopeful signal that of shared recognition around the bill's importance. Sorry, Rep. Blais, I stepped on your.
No, I was just going to follow up on that and say that I think that you and I certainly feel the urgency here and have been doing everything that we can to push this along. And certainly having the support of so many House and Senate colleagues right off the bat has been particularly impactful.
Thanks, John, for that question.
Thank you so much.
Sure, we appreciate you. Any other questions, friends? Okay, I don't see any. Of course, we'll send out Rep. Blais and my cell phone number as well, and our team's contact information. We welcome any and all feedback, comments, questions. This is a moment to be rigorous in our analysis of both what's needed and potential solutions. So we look forward to a robust conversation about this going forward at hopefully a very timely clip, because I know that our municipalities really need and deserve this kind of shared urgency that I know we all have. Closing words from you, Rep. Blais?
No, just thank everybody for being here today. We really appreciate your support and your partnership in moving this forward as quickly as possible.
And Senator, if I could just jump into, maybe we should send a few pictures of the conditions that Philip is encountering in Conway, because that is an absolute eye opener. You know, the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. To be living in those conditions 3, 4, and 5 months after a situation, something's wrong with the system. And I think we can fix it with this bill.
Thanks, Rep. Barrett. I think very smart. And I see a thumbs up from Philip. So, and I know that there are questions, and Megan would also be happy to send pictures. I do think that part of the next steps of this bill will be to take the stories told today and raise them up even higher so that we can share an understanding of the depth of what happened even in this little window, right? It's not all of in our time, the natural disasters and people-made disasters, just this little window, the hardship that our communities and our people experienced. I do think you're right to call for pictures, John. Thank you. All right, friends, I think this concludes this beautiful bill launch. We're grateful that you shared this time with us. And I'm so glad to be in partnership with Rep. Blais. Take care.
Well, take care.